Love in the Big City is written by Sung-Yong Park and translated by Anton Hur, published by Tilted Axis Press. This is a really charming and lovely Korean queer romance and coming of age and life story. Sung-Yong Park is a queer Korean author, and he has made, as far as I can tell, a pretty big splash in the world of Korean literature, and for good reason. Love in the Big City is a really sweet and heartfelt, heartwarming, but also raw take on love and life and lived experiences in the modern day. From what I can glean from Sung-Yong Park's biography, this feels very familiar to his own life. The protagonist studies French literature at university. Sung-Yong Park was also a student of French literature. They both live in Seoul, they both seem to be around the same age, so I assume that there's some autobiographical elements going on here. Love in the Big City tells the story of a young Korean man who is gay and who is periodically going through a lot of different things in his life, and these different disparate elements make up him as a person. The novel begins with him in a very close friendship with a girl from his class at university. The two of them are thick as thieves. They are both living very hedonistically. They're going out drinking, dancing, partying, sleeping around, and having a good time. They use each other as scapegoats. When one is being hounded, the other picks up the phone and says, go away, or pretends to be their boyfriend or girlfriend. They work for each other to make sure that they are living their best lives individually and as a pair of friends. Part 1 is a truly charming example of young friendship, especially between two people who think and feel the same way about living life. They are students, they are young, they are late teens, early 20s, and they are looking to enjoy sex and life and love, drinking, smoking, partying, and just being alive. But this can't last, or at least it doesn't last. Our protagonist's friend, Jae-hee, eventually grows up, for lack of a better phrase. She enters adulthood by finding someone to love and marry and settle down with. Up until now, our protagonist, Young, and Jae-hee have been living together and helping each other and being pals and drowning their sorrows together, laughing together, partying together. But now Jae-hee is moving out and she's getting married and she's entering into the adult world. And so Young has to do his version of the same thing. He has to move on out into the world. What he finds, luckily for him in some ways, is that he has a gift for writing, and he slowly becomes a published writer. He continues to work ordinary jobs, and he's called up for his military service. In South Korea, you have to do 2 years of military service as a young man, if you're a man. And so he does that. He's also contending with the fact that his mother has an illness. When he was very young, she was diagnosed with cancer. She went into remission, she lived a few more years, and the cancer came back. And part 2 really focuses on his relationship with her, now in her second battle with cancer, and his relationship to her in the past through flashbacks as well. Part 2 really focuses on that relationship. And then we move into part 3, where Young is experiencing love and sex and relationships from a different angle. And we continue to get intermittent flashbacks to his earlier life, his earlier days, and a disease that he himself is now contending with. I won't give you any more details, because I'm sort of treading over the halfway point here. But it doesn't really matter. This isn't really a book about spoilers, this is a book about experiences and feelings. You are relating to this young protagonist, or not, but you are at least sympathizing with him and his struggles. He struggles with, of course, homophobia all the way throughout his life. When he's out partying, he is threatened, or when he's even at a hospital, he hears orderlies and nurses and doctors saying horrible things, using homophobic slurs against him when he thinks that they can't hear him. He is constantly encountering homophobia, but he is also laughing in the face of it and trying to just live and enjoy his life as best he can. He's a very, very likable protagonist while being a very honest and therefore broken and therefore sometimes unlikable one as well. The translation by Anton Hur is just so spot on in terms of how he has communicated this character in English, how he has brought soul and the soul, if you like, of this character to life. There is so much playfulness with the language that Anton has brought to life here in his translation, as he always does repeatedly. Anton is a very good translator in terms of his playfulness with language. At least that's how I read it. And I have to really thank Tilted Axis for bringing this book to us. They do such a splendid job with how they promote books, the books that they choose. They continuously win or are nominated for awards as a publisher, or their books are nominated for awards for very good reason. They pick the best books. And here, with the cover design, they've done a really excellent job. People really love Tilted Axis covers. They've become quite famous for their cover design, and I love them too. This one particularly grabbed me. You've got a packet of Marlboro cigarettes, a bunch of loose blueberries, and some blocks of ice. And this factors into the story very specifically. It's a very charming visual aspect to the early parts of the book. When Yong and Jae-hee are living together, they are always looking out for each other, as I said, and there's one thing that they do for each other, which is that she always stocks fresh fruit. He likes blueberries, and so she always buys him blueberries. And to return the favour, he always buys her Marlboro cigarettes, and he puts them in the freezer, because she loves taking out cigarettes and having their cold touch against her lips. It's a quirk of hers. And so you have that friendship blended together in this lovely piece of art, the cigarettes for her and the blueberries for him. And so you begin the book, before you've even opened it, you've got this visual metaphor for their friendship, and their friendship is where we begin the story. So it's kind of setting you up on the right foot for enjoying this character and his relationship to his best friend. There's so much charm and sweetness here. But this is also a really bittersweet book because, again, it's reflective of ordinary life. So as I said, you've got the homophobia. Disease plays a big part in this. And it is, in some ways, a coming-of-age story. But beyond all of that, most importantly, it really is about love. As the book goes on, Yong finds himself falling into relationships. Short-term, long-term, good ones, bad ones, easy ones, hard ones. Love and relationships play a very important part here. It is called Love in the Big City. And as I said, it's separated into 4 parts, and part 3 shares the title, Love in the Big City, because it's when we hit part 3 that we really start to see that romantic side of him, that serious approach to love, romance, sex, desire, a focus on relationships, a focus on them from a kind of adult perspective, more than a playful, youthful perspective as it was in part 1. And part 2 bridges those two things, that youthful hedonism and that mature search for love and normalcy and connection, romantically and personally and generally. Part 2 bridges those two things by being a very somber and serious chapter that still explores sexual and romantic relationships, but has a real focus on Young's relationship to his mum, and again, disease plays a real important part of sort of grounding the whole story and anchoring it in that middle part. This is a very well-paced, plotted, and organised book, and all of that is communicated brilliantly through Anton Hur's translation. I am so enamoured with the story here, and especially Young himself as a character. I felt very, very attached to him. Sung-Young Park has written something really special here, and I'm glad that a young queer Korean author has made it here in English and we get to enjoy his story. It's a really lovely one. It's difficult sometimes, it's very poignant, it will pull at your heartstrings, but it ultimately leaves you feeling pretty happy about life and the state of it all. Subscribe for books.